time for Wise Guys Wednesday.
Yes, we are continuing our lesson from last week, and I guess the week before, too. We've been talking about this for a while.
This is the conclusion of a three-part series.
Yes, U of I Professor Paul Kwiat is joining us this morning.
So we're going to start with something actually a little bit different. The question is about soda and why it goes flat.
Tell me.
So the fizz in soda is carbon dioxide that's in it, and what happens when you open it is that slowly that leaches out and goes into the environment. And it turns out that that depends on the temperature of the soda, how fast that happens. Because if you have the temperature being hotter, then the CO2 molecules are not bound in liquid and they can escape more. So we're going to just do a quick demo of that. So what I've done is I have some hot water here, and I have some very cold water here. And I have two little test tubes that are filled with Diet Coke, okay, which has carbonation in. And what I'm going to do, hopefully, and not mess this up, I'm going to turn these over and I'm going to put them in. And what we should see, if this works, what we should see is that there's going to be a difference in how much the CO2 comes out of the two things. So here we go. On three. 1, 2, 3. Great.
Oh, nice.
That was one success.
Graceful.
And number 2.
Maybe.
Oh.
That was.
That's all right. That's all right. It's difficult.
That's right. That's why I brought enough.
Trial and error.
So we could try it again.
Right. Gotta be graceful about that.
1,
So
2,
that's
3.
the hot water.
There we go.
And this is the cold water.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're just going to let that go for a little while.
All right.
Okay, so we can keep talking. So,
all right, great.
Then we reviewed the greenhouse effect before, and we said we can do the first slide. The thing that happens is that the energy from the sun, the visible energy from the sun, comes through the atmosphere, is transmitted through the atmosphere, heats up the Earth, heats up the surface of the planet. That then re-radiates in the infrared, and that infrared radiation goes up, and in the atmosphere encounters these greenhouse gases like water and carbon dioxide, and those absorb it and basically trap it and re-radiate it back to the Earth. So you can think of the layer of greenhouse gases as like a blanket, and so then they reheat the Earth a little bit. And we need that, otherwise the Earth would be too cold, but if you get too many of them, then it's a problem. So actually the next slide shows that there's a correlation between the amount of greenhouse gases that's on the left and the temperature of the planet, that's on the right, and you can see that there's a direct correlation. So the thing is that if you have too much CO2, then the temperature goes up. Or let's just say if you have more CO2, the temperature is higher.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay, so then the thing that we talked about last week was positive feedback and how that's a bad thing. So for example, if you're in a car and your car drifts to the right and you turn more to the right, then you're just going to crash to the right. So that's positive feedback. Or for example, if in your house, when you set the thermostat to 70 degrees, if it went to 71 and it turned the heat higher, that would be bad, because then it would get even hotter and then it would turn the heat higher. So that's positive feedback is a bad thing. Okay, so now we can connect this to what we're doing here. So if we come back to these.
So cool. You talked for about a minute, and look at this.
Right.
It's a lot different.
So I can pull these out, and then you can actually maybe see a little bit easier. So this is the cold water, where basically most of the CO2 has stayed in the liquid. And this is the hot one, where most of the CO2 has come out. It's pushed the liquid out of the test tube, and that's why we have a lot of the air at the top here.
Okay.
Right, so in fact, if I pull this up, you can see that that's all air for the hot water, and this is all air for, sorry, this is not much air has left, not much CO2 is left for the cold water.
Yeah.
And in fact, that goes to our third slide, which shows just the fact that how much CO2 you can put in water depends on the temperature. So the higher the temperature, the less of the CO2 is in the water. Okay, now we can wrap this all back up together, coming back to me, and positive feedback. So the thing is that when the oceans, so too much CO2 in the atmosphere leads to the greenhouse effect, and then that heats up the planet.
Right.
We need to put the CO2 somewhere. Where can we put it? It turns out the oceans hold a lot of the CO2. As the temperature of the planet goes up, the oceans get warmer, and then they don't hold as much CO2. So that puts more CO2, more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. That heats the planet. That raises the temperature of the oceans. They release more CO2. That puts more of a blanket. And so it's a runaway effect. Positive feedback is bad. So we talked about positive feedback last time from the fact that as the ice caps melt, as the ice melts, then it doesn't reflect as much of the sun, and that heats things up more. This is a second runaway process. The fact is there's a couple of these positive feedback loops, and that's really bad. It's very difficult to then predict what's going to happen, and things can heat up a lot quicker than you think. So if people are interested in learning more about that sort of stuff, the very last slide I have here is a really good resource that people can look at. If they want, hopefully.
Just say the website.
Maybe.
It is skepticalscience.com.
Yep.
Skepticalscience.com.
Got
and you guys
it.
can put that on your webpage.
Will do.
And people can find out more about this.
I will connect that with this segment today on our website. Thanks, Paul, as always. Maybe we'll have some Diet Coke now.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Well, you guys send our Wise Guys your questions. Go to our Morning Show Facebook page and do those. But still to come, we have a couple of pictures for you guys.
Yeah, we'll show you some of these, along with this one right there. There it is right now. We'll show you more coming up next.